Hello YouTube, my name is Bruno and today I'm going to show you how to improve the user experience of your application using simple tricks, for example, caching HTTP requests. For that, we are going to use SWR. If you want to follow along and create this application with me, I have the link in the description. The SWR documentation is also in the description. So this application, as the name implies, is like a Jira ticket. We have comments and we have an input field where we can type something, add a comment, and hopefully in the future we will be able to update this table. So let's jump into code. Our add comment is just a form with one field and a submit button. If you watched the video from last week about Formic, this simple code looks probably familiar. If you didn't, it's okay. What's happening here is every time I click on my add comment, this onSubmit function will be called. So this is the place where we need to do the call to our server in order to post the data. So in my case, I will use Axios, but you are free to use Fetch or any other library you like. So let's do this localhost 4001/comments. I think that's it, the URL. And now the last thing we need to do after importing Axios, okay, is to mark this function as async and on top of that saying await here, because this post will return a promise for us. Okay, so now that we have that, we can go back to our page. Okay, we can probably even refresh this page just to make sure that everything is fresh. And let's say that we do hello world, for example. Another typo. Good job, Bruno. So doing that and going back to our mock server, refreshing our mock server, we can see that we have that hello world with that weird typo, but it's there, okay? Our next step now is to go to our table and do a real HTTP call in order to get data from our mock server. So let's do that. Let's go to our home page here, and our home page, as I said, has completely hard-coded data. So we can remove this one, okay, and do the following. We need data, a function to set the data, and we will use state from React. So by default, we will pass an empty array. Then we can use an effect, okay? Okay, so let's just import this state. I don't know, use effect. Yes, use effect is already imported as well. And if you don't know, I will just let you know that you can't do this, okay? This will have weird behavior. So, well, VS Code was already saying something. So what you have to do is to say async function, let's call it load data, for example, okay? And before I forget, let's just make the load data there. And so what we need to do here is to do a get, in my case, again, using Axios. So let's do Axios, oops, await. And why did VS Code move my Axios to capitalized? I don't know, but we can just do this, copy, paste, and now put again our URL. So comments, okay? If you are asking yourself why I'm doing this all the time, by the end of the video I will create a base URL for Axios so I can remove that from every single endpoint. But for now I'm just keeping it there, okay? So in Axios now we will have a response, okay? And this response will be an object, and the real response that we care about is inside data. So let's do this, data response.data. Okay, now if we go to our page, everything should just work as we expected. So coming here, and we already have the data from the server. It means the browser already refreshed by itself. And we can do something else, another hello with a lot of O's. Okay, we can comment. The server already replied, but as you can see, our table is not updating yet because we are just doing the initial call when the component is initialized, and that's it. We never redo the call. So we could have a lot of ways to solve it. One of the ways is for our component here the add comment to have an output function, okay, or an event function that will just trigger that event. And then here we know that that event triggered, so we will change something that we will put in the dependencies of the use effect, and the use effect will trigger again, but it's already too many things, right? So it must be a better way to do that, and I'm glad to inform you that yes, there is a better way. But before we do that better way, I want to show you something else in this normal approach. So let's kill our mock server, okay? Oops, sorry for the sound. Let's just kill our mock server, go back here and say that the default timeout or the default delay from our mock server is no longer 10 milliseconds, but 2 seconds, okay? So now for every post, get, put, delete, our server will take at least 2 seconds, okay? So let's just restart our mock server. This one should be fast to restart. Yes, it already restarted. So going back here, refreshing, and you will see that our table will take roughly the 2 seconds to load. Now watch this, and this probably happens in your application today. You go to a different page, okay, and going to a different page and coming back to the previous page, you are reloading the data. You are not caching that data. So in this case, it was only 2 seconds, but imagine that this call will take 10 seconds. Your user will have a completely empty screen for 10 seconds. Can we do something better? Yes, we can. So let's come here back to our home page, delete all of the code we created, okay? So I will just copy this bit. I will just copy this bit because I'm tired of typing it all the time. So what we need to do, we will do data, and now we will use a new hook that was done by the same exact people that did the next.js or created next.js. So let's just import this one. So import this from SWR, okay? Now with this, we just need one more parameter because by default, SWR is completely agnostic in which library or which fetcher you use, okay? You can use fetch, you can use Axios, you can use, as I said before, any other library. So they require you to pass here or in context. I will put it here first and then put it in context because it's much easier to use in context, okay? So if you want to pass a function for your fetcher here, it will be something like this, okay? So now we have Axios, we pass the URL, then, because we can use Axios as a promise, and this is again the same thing I did before, okay? So in this case, I just need to import Axios from Axios again, and this should just work. For the first time, we will have caching. So going back to our browser, okay, fair. So now our data, it will be undefined by default, okay? So the first time we receive data, this data can be undefined, and yes, it will be undefined for us. So because we are using TypeScript 3.7, we can do just this, okay? If you are not, you can do something like this and you are safe as well, okay? Oops, sorry. You can do this and you are safe as well. So whichever version of TypeScript you are using, you can do one or the other, okay? But because we are using 3.7, we can just do this. It's nicer, right? So going back to our browser, you will see something quite nice. I click now in Add Comment, okay? I click in Home, and I already have my data because it was cached by SWR. Isn't it amazing? I think it is. So next step that we can do is coming here and remove this from here, because if we want to use SWRs in a lot of components, having to pass this all the time is painful. Trust me, it's really painful. So how can we avoid that and just have this clean call? Okay, we can come here, and because this is a next.js application, I will just put it here, okay? And SWR config, yep, value equals to, I think they call it a fetcher. Yes, they do. Okay, it seems good. Let's just close this one, copy it here, and close it over there. The last thing we need to do once again is importing Axios. So import Axios from Axios, okay? And now we are passing this as a context, and this is on the top level of our application. So every single component will just receive this specific fetcher, okay? If you prefer to use fetch, as I said before, you put it there and it will just work. So coming to our application and refreshing, okay? We now should be able to see our data and everything is just working as before. The same thing, we can come here, okay? Come back and the data is there, okay? And as you see here, every time we go away and we come back, oops, I didn't click, and we come back, in reality, SWR is doing the call. You can cancel that. If you really want to, you can cancel that. But is doing the call again for things like this. Imagine that I go to another page. I copy this, okay? And let's see this. I say, hello from another tab, okay? I click, okay, perfect. I go back in time and another fetch happened because this window is now on focus, and every time you regain focus, SWR will trigger a new call, and that's really powerful. You can cancel that, okay? If you really want to, you have a lot of options here that you can just cancel. For example, imagine that your component does 2 times the same call in less than, I think the default is 2 seconds, but let's say in less than 10 seconds. So you just do one call. And what's this deduping? So if I come here, okay, and I do this, okay, I can do this as data 1, it doesn't even matter those names, okay, as data 2, and 2 times is just good enough, okay. So if I do this, okay, you are probably expecting SWR to do 3 calls, but no, because I'm passing this bit here and saying deduping interval of 5 seconds. So the same call to the same endpoint in the next 5 seconds will not be repeated. We will use the first one, okay? So going back to our page, if I refresh, you will see that I only do 1 call to comments, okay? Even though I'm using it 3 times. And this can be quite powerful if you have it in different components. For example, imagine that someone from business, and by the way, I said this is 2 seconds by default, so I think is a good enough default. Imagine that someone from business comes to you and says, hey, look, Bruno, we really need in the add comments, okay, to have one new property that says how many comments exist in the application at the moment. And you will be like, well, my endpoint doesn't return that. Well, but we need it now. And it happens quite a lot, right? And so in most scenarios, you will be like, oh, screw it. I need to change a lot the application, or I need to just repeat the call and do a .length, right? That's the 2 possibilities that you have. But here, you don't need to worry about that. You can just do this, okay? Even though we are in completely different components, right? Let's do react.fragment, or even putting a div, whatever you want to use is not important right now. So we can just say number of comments, and we can say data dot length. Oops, I needed a thing here. Okay, so we can just copy these, close our formic with that div, and now if you go back to our browser, I just need to import this. Will VS Code help? Nope, doesn't help. It's okay. SWR. Okay, so now when we go back to our browser, in a normal scenario, if we were not using SWR, you will be a bit sad with your job because you will be doing 2 calls for the exact same data. Well, not anymore. So SWR kind of saved you, right? So you can come here and we only did 1 call. And look, you showed over there the 7. So it's quite powerful what you can do with that. I'm not saying for you to not create your API endpoints properly and just do a bunch of calls in every single component, but it can save you in a really delicate situation, it can save you, because in reality you didn't create any problem for your users. You still have just one comment call, okay? So it's quite powerful. So the next thing we can do is the delete, and in the home we have a delete. But even before we go to the delete, it will be quite nice for us to do a comment, and immediately after we do the comment, this table update, right? It will be quite nice. So let's go there. Let's do that one first. Let's come here. Let's just delete this alert, okay? Because with that alert, we lose focus of the window, so clicking the table behind the scenes will just refresh, okay? I can show you that now when we do something. For example, AAA, I can click, it's finished, okay? And this table no longer updates because, well, SWR has no way to know that it updated. So in order to do that, we can come here and use something called trigger event, I guess. Let me just check. I think it's trigger. Yes, trigger, okay? And what is this trigger? This trigger in reality is something that we can do like that, okay? And we just pass this bit here. And what we are telling SWR is, hey, please, something changed on that endpoint. So please go ahead, do another HTTP call and update the cache with that new call, right? And this is already a good start. Let's go to our page. And now you will see that it will update both this and the list here. So let's say last option, I think is a good name, like any other. And when this is finished, okay, my mouse. When it's finished, you will see that we did another call to the server, right? And you can see that the 9 here updated and my last option here updated. This is really powerful because it even allows me to go to another page and we are doing the same call there, right? So we can say hello world, XXXXX, for example, just to be different, okay? Now it updated there, so we can go home and it's already updated for those as well. Okay, this is quite powerful, but we can do even better. So let's do this even better. Instead of saying trigger, we can use something called mutate, I guess. I think it's mutate or mutate state. Yes, mutate. Okay, and what is mutate in reality? Mutate is a bit stronger, let's say that way, than trigger. Trigger, you are just telling SWR to go to your server and then update cache. In mutate, you are mutating the cache first, and after you go to the server and update your cache. So it's much more of what's called the optimistic UI. So you are just trusting blindly that your server will do what it should do, and you update immediately your UI. It's a bit what Facebook does in likes. You click the like, it immediately happens, right? So they don't wait to go to the server, to come back, and only if the response is true or a valid response, they update the number of likes. No, they update immediately. I think YouTube does the same thing. So we can come here and we will see that mutate receives a key and the data that we want to do. And on top of that, if you don't want to revalidate, if you don't want to revalidate, you can even say, hey, trust me, just don't revalidate. It's okay, don't revalidate. In my case, I want it to revalidate. But in here, we can just do the following. So data, okay, and we can just say something like this. Okay, so my comment, which is values, values, it's over there. And you will see that the ID is not there yet, but the user experience is much better than not updating at all, right? So let me just clear our cache of our database because my mock server saves everything in a JSON file. So let's just revert to have a smaller list to see it happening. Okay, I saved. And now going back to our page, we will have this here. So let's give it a try and say hello world once again, add comment, and I know I made a mistake. Okay, I have a mistake. Coming back to our home component, not home, sorry, the add comment, what's happening here? I'm posting, and only after post, I'm mutating the data. And that's wrong. We want to mutate before we post, right? We mutate, we post. So when we post and we mutate before, we immediately change the data that our users are seeing. Then when the post is finished and it comes back, it just updates if he has to update the data from the table, right? So let's just try this way. And I think even before going to the browser, I still have another bug there. Okay, but yeah, keep with me. Let's try again. So let's say JJJ, comment, you see JJJ immediately, okay? But then JJJ disappears. Why is this happening? Okay. Do you remember that I said that I didn't want to pass the ReValidate to false? Actually, probably I need to pass the ReValidate to false. And why that? Because when I'm passing this ReValidate to false, I'm not re-updating that, okay? I'm just mutating the state. I don't want SWR to do another call to my server, okay? I just want to mutate the state. And then after my call is performed and is okay, then yes, I need to trigger, okay? And I can trigger this bit, okay? So now I want to go to the server, trigger another call in the server, and when the server responds or replies, I just update my cache. Okay, another import over there. And I'm starting to get annoyed of having all of those strings. We will go back to it, as I said before. Okay, so if we come here and we refresh, let's just call it why. Good enough. So adding a comment, the why sooner or later will now do the call, and okay, now you have the 7. Okay, some APIs, okay, will also return to you immediately the next state in the post. If your API does that, then you can just do another mutate and passing again the ReValidate to false. ReValidate is only saying that it will do another call to your server. Okay, that's what ReValidate means. So depending on your API, you can do that or not. My mock server, it just returns the current one that we changed or that we added, okay? So coming back here, as I said, the next step is to delete, okay? And the delete will be really similar to what we did with the head, okay? So let's start the delete. Let's go to our home, okay? And let's just put it there. And let's go to our home. And where do we have the button to delete? It's here. Okay. So let's come here and let's do on click. Okay. So now when we click, this function will be invoked. And what do we want to do in here? We want to do a Axios.delete of that endpoint. And on top of that, we want to pass the ID. And so the ID is row.id. So we can do something like this. Axios.post. I don't know why Axios is again capitalized VS Code. So, oops, not there. So we need to do http / localhost 4001 /comments / row.id. Okay, and this is not a post. I said that I wanted to do a delete, right? So let's just do it simple first, and then we can start to play with mutate and trigger again, okay? But let's start by the simple version. Let's come here and see, oops, didn't we import Axios already? Oh no, we didn't. We had it imported here, but then we removed, so that's why VS Code was changing Axios to capitalized A. VS Code for some reason prefers it that way. I don't. So now saving, going back to our browser, let's just refresh to make sure that everything is up to date, okay? And after it updates, we can just come to the first one and click delete. And hopefully it's pending, it responded, okay? So hopefully if we refresh, everything should be without the number 1 now, right? Yes, now the first one is number 2. So let's do what we did for the add comment in the delete. So the first thing we want to do is to remove that one immediately, okay? And then we want to trigger. So let's do mutate of this endpoint, And yes, I'm starting to get really annoyed with myself. So let's just do this. So let's do URL over there. And at least I will not be that annoyed with myself. So we will have mutate, then we can do data and dot filter. And we will filter by what? By the ID, because we have the row.id, so we can filter element or comment. And when the comment.id equals to row.id, actually is the opposite filter we want, otherwise we will delete everything except that one, right? So we want to delete all the others except that one. So let's just import this. If VS Code is with us, yes, it is. So we immediately trigger that change. And then the next thing is to say false. We don't want to trigger immediately, but we want to trigger after this one. So we can do this URL. And why is this mutate complaining to us? Cannot find the name mutate. Oh, really? But it's there. How can't you find it? Okay. Import. Okay, let's go down. And now it's triggered. It's just VS Code. My computer is super slow. It already crashed once. Okay. So if we refresh this page, okay, and we wait the 2 seconds, and now I'm starting to regret my decision to make the mock server take 2 seconds, but we can come here and, oops, it failed miserably because I'm stupid. Now the URL we want is still this one, okay? The only one we want with row.id is the one that we are doing the delete verb, okay? All the others, so let's call this delete URL, delete URL, and let's call the other URL equals to just this bit, okay? Okay, so now we can do this, and now yes, it will work, okay? If you didn't understand what happened, literally I was mutating the URL with /id. In this case it was 2, okay? And what I should mutate is the top level comments URL, not the /id, okay? So now I change mutate and trigger to have those as the defined ones. So if we come here, we refresh. Now we don't have to because we already deleted it in the previous reload of the page, but we can come here, delete 4, for example. 4 immediately disappears. We triggered now to get the comments, and when it finished, 4 is not there, so our page is perfectly pristine there, okay? And if you start to do this a lot, your application will look much more responsive to your users. And let's be honest, the amount of work you have to do with something like SWR is not that much. And even this one is kind of optional, right? Or in reality, the trigger is optional. So you probably don't even need the trigger some of the times. If it's a page that only your user cares about, you probably don't even need the trigger. You need the trigger most of the times when you have something like this. Let me show you. You open this page, you open, oh, this page was really old. So you open this page, and in one of them you say, hello world, for example, right? And we save, and now this page has hello world, okay? And we come here and we do a delete of number 3, okay? But imagine that when we did the delete of number 3, we also deleted something here. So the pages can be not synchronized, even though SWR will synchronize when you move to that tab. But if it was a real different user, not in the same machine, but in 2 different machines, you want to just re-get the latest state from your server. So I would say usually is a good practice for you to have the trigger still, but it's up to you and the requirements of your application, right? If the user is changing his own profile picture, probably you don't need to trigger again because he's the only person changing his own profile picture. So we did almost everything. The last thing I want to show you is how to make that base URL, because at the moment, as you can see, we are passing this localhost 4001 all over the place, right? So let's go here for our app.tsx, And if you are in a Create React app, this is the normal app.js or app.jsx or something like that. Okay, so we have Axios over there already. Yep. So we can do Axios.defaults, and we have something called base URL equals to HTTP localhost 4001. Okay, and I don't want the slash because I want to put the slash everywhere else. And so with this, you can even have an environment variable. For example, while you are compiling the application, you can have an environment variable my endpoint. Okay, so if you have endpoint, you use that one. If you don't have endpoint, you use your mock server. You can have something like that, okay? And it will just work. It's completely fine. For now, I will just keep the localhost like that. And this is one of the reasons I really love Axios. The other one is interceptors, even though we will not touch interceptors today. But if you ever used an interceptor in Axios, you know the power it can give you. For example, if you are doing an HTTP call, okay, and you want to authenticate your user against that HTTP call and add some headers to your request, with an interceptor, you just do it in one place. You don't need to populate everywhere that header. One place, and it just works, okay? So this was one of the last things I wanted to do to you today, but just to prove it works, we can come to our home.txx and we can delete this from everywhere, okay? So let's just do this, okay? And now we will also remove in the wrong place, but let's move on. No, actually not, because I have the slash. Okay, so I removed everywhere blindly, but let's see if the application works, okay? Let's just close all of the files to make sure that everything was saved, refresh, and if it works, we have a nice tutorial for today, right? Everything seems to work. Let's just say hello once again. Hello, Bruno. Okay, yep, it seems to be working. It will take now 2 more seconds, and we have that thing over there. We can delete. It will do another call to comments. When this call finishes, no update. So everything looks super fine. You can go to the next page, you can come back, and you still have everything cached. Really great user experience, right? So if, and that's the only reason I did this tutorial in next.js, is if you have an application and this application is using next.js, you can have an initial values here in SWR. So let's say that you want to pass initial data, not initial values, initial data. So we can say that by default, we will have a comment called Bruno, for example, with ID 1999, for example, that number, okay? And that can be quite powerful. Imagine that you are doing server-side rendering, okay? You did your server-side rendering, you already did your fetch call over there, so when your component rehydrates in the client browser, you immediately inject that initial data, so the user will never see any flickering or anything weird happening, right? So if we come here and refresh, you will see that by default, my application will start with 999 Bruno, and when the call is finished, then it just puts whatever new value. And in next.js, you can, oops, I wanted to go to my browser, okay? You can come to next.js, okay? And in the next.js, oops, GitHub, okay? You have something to load data, okay? And that thing is get initial props. Oops, they don't even have it here, okay? So let's see if they have it in the documentation. Next.js, next website, next.js. So docs, and let's say if they have get initial, where is that? Oops, get initial, it's get initial props. Okay, my bad. So we can have something like this, okay? So let's do this, okay? We come here to the bottom, okay? And here at the bottom, we can have our Axios, like we already have, and our Axios, because we already have that base URL, so we can just do comments, okay? And we will get that res. In the res, we will put data, okay? And so we don't need a wait for our data, so we have our JSON, okay? So we can say this, and we can say, what do you want to call it? Comments from server. Is it a good name? Probably it is, okay? So we can come here and say that we receive comments from server, and we can even say any for now, okay? Just to not worry too much about it. So we can have this, and this will immediately do server-side rendering for you with the HTTP call, okay? So when your application reloads on your browser, let's go to our application, okay? Oops, oh, okay, it's not page. We called it home, okay? Close enough, Bruno. So we called it home, right? So when we have that, and it's still reloading, so hopefully when we refresh, and you will see that immediately our application is loading with that data. So if you come here and you put all, okay, and you come to the localhost, okay, let me just open this, and you do preview, this is the first load, and your page is immediately there with all the data that you will ever need, okay? And the application is still working, okay? The application is not broken. Hello, Bruno's. And add comment, and the application is still working as you would expect this application to work. So I really, really hope you like this tutorial. And next week, we will come back for more. So please, if you really like this, like the video and subscribe. See you next week. Bye-bye.